Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Metzia Daf Tezayin, and we're going to start on the bottom of Tezvav Amabeis, on the bottom of 15b, 7 lines from the bottom. And the Gemara has a question that Shmuel asks from Rav. The Gemara had previously been discussing a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel about a circumstance where, let's just say, Ruvain had a field, Shimon stole the field, sold it to Levi, and then Ruvain claimed the field back from Levi. Levi goes to Shimon and says, "Give me back my money." Rav says Shimon has to give Levi the money plus the improvements Levi had done to the property. Where Shmuel says, no, he doesn't have to return the improvements because that looks like interest. He's not allowed to return the improvements. He just has to return the money. But now Shmuel asks a different question from Rav. Now, let's say after Shimon sold it to Levi, he goes back and purchases it from Ruvain. He purchases the field from Ruvain, who was the original owner. What would be the law under these circumstances? Do we say, Rashi says, and now Shimon can go to Levi and say, listen, I bought the field, but you had bought a stolen field, and now I bought the real field. I want to seize it from you. So that's the question. So Amar Le, so Rav responds to Shmuel, Ma machar lo rishon hasheni, kol chusha tavo yado. No, what did Shimon sell to Levi when he sold him the field that was stolen? He sold him any rights that he would eventually have in the field, and so therefore, since he then bought the field, he has basically sold that when he went and purchased the field. Now he had purchased it with the intent that Levi should have a stronger hold on the field. So the Gemara says, "My taima." What's the reasoning here? Mar Zutra says that the reasoning is nichole dulo nikre gazlana, that it's good for Shimon that he doesn't want to be called a robber, and so therefore he went to support the sale by buying it from Reuven. So he had originally bought it with the intent to give it to Levi. Rav Ashi says, Nichole deleku b'em nusei. No, he wants to be seen as a trustworthy person. And my benayo, what's the distinction between them? Ika benayo, the distinction between them is a circumstance to mislokeach, where Levi, the third party here, the one who had originally bought it from Shimon, dies. So Manda Amar Nichole Delo Likraya Gazlana, the one who says, well, he doesn't want to be called a robber by Levi, or Misley. Well, now Levi's dead. We're on the top of 16a. Manda Amar Nichole Delekum Bam Nuse, or according to the one who says, that he wants to be upheld in his, as a trustworthy person. Well, through his own children, through the purchaser's children, through Levi's children, he wants to be known as a good, trustworthy person. So the Gemara says, well, we have a problem with this answer. Well, what does he care if the person who purchased it called him a robber, or if his children are calling him a robber? In the end, he's still going to be called a robber. So the distinction between them is Demeis Gazlan, where the robber himself died. Manda Amar, according to the one who says Nichole Gazlan, according to the one who says he bought it because the person doesn't want to be called a robber. Misley. Well, now he's died. Now he's dead. And we could say that his whole intent was to support the sale if he's alive. But now that he's dead, it wasn't his intent to support the sale after he died. And so therefore his intent was nullified. And so therefore it wouldn't be a good sale. If according to the one who says he wanted to be a trustworthy person, even after he dies, you want a good reputation. You want people to think you're a trustworthy person. Well, so Gemara says, well, what do we care? Karu livnei b'nei gazlana. Well, what does he care if he's called a robber, but it's still going to be a problem because his children are going to be called the children of robbers. So, Ala Ika Benayo, so what do we say the distinction between them is? Tiyava b'matana. The distinction between them is where he didn't sell, Shimon didn't sell the property to Levi, but he gave it to him as a gift. The one who says he wants to be known as a trustworthy person. So even if he gives a gift, he wants to be known as a trustworthy person. According to one who says he doesn't want to be called a robber, he could say to him, "My gazlina minach." He could say to him, "What did I steal from you?" So since he didn't steal anything from you, therefore, for that reasoning, it wouldn't apply under that reasoning. Hold on 1 second. Okay, just have to do this. 1 second. Okay. So the Gemara says, Pshita, it's obvious, Zabna Orta V'Yahava B'Matana Lav Ukme Kamei Lokeach Kabai. So we said that maybe he purchased it, the robber purchased it from the owner to give it to the person who had bought it from the robber. But it's obvious that if prior to Zabna Urta, the Ahava b'matana, that it's obviously the case that if he went, Zabna, he went and before Shimon brought the property from Reuven, he went and he sold it again to another person. I mean, he sold it to two people, or Urta, or he bequeathed it to one of his children, or Yava b'matana, or he gave it away to somebody else as a gift, and now he goes and purchases it from Reuven. It's obviously the case that guy's just a fraudster, and he's not buying it in order to give it to Levi, to support it for Levi, because he's giving it to multiple people. But now the Gemara asks the question, Nafale B'Yerusha, but let's say he got this property from Reuven, but he didn't buy it from him, but he inherited it. So do we view the same way that he's inheriting it for the person who he had sold the property to? Yerusha Memela, he Valav Iu Katarach Abasra, and inheritance comes to him Memela, meaning he doesn't do anything. It just de facto arrives in his door. And so he didn't do anything for it. And so therefore, Gave Iu Bechova. And so therefore, under those circumstances, Gabi Ihu Bechovo. Or if another case would be, let's say he collected it as part of a debt that Shimon collected as part of a debt that Reuven owes him. Then Chazina, then we have to look at the matter. If Reuven had other lands to give him, Vamar Haibaina, look. But Shimon says, no, this is the one I want. So it's Lukman Kamei Lokeach. So it's because he wants to give it to the purchaser. Below, but if he doesn't have on the other lands, if Reuven has no other lands, Zuzu hu debai apriye. But then it's clear that he's just trying to pay back the money that Reuven owes Shimon. You have a nilei b'matana. Let's say Reuven gave it to Shimon as a gift. One says a gift is like inheritance, that since it just showed up at his door, so therefore it wasn't for the third party. One says that no, a gift is like a sale. Because we didn't work hard to be pleasing in front of him, he wouldn't have given him this gift. And that's why he worked hard in front of him. And that's why he worked hard in front of him, so that he would give him this piece of property, and so now he'll look like a trustworthy person in front of Levi. But Amos Nichole Delekum Pamdu. So the Gemara asks a general question. Until what point do we say that if he gets this gift, he was doing it in order to be seen as a trustworthy person by the person who he had sold the stolen property to? Amar Afuna Achas Amadabadin. Until the time it comes to court. And Chia Barav Amar Adamata Adrachta Yadi. Until the Adrachta came to his hands, meaning to say that the ruling in the court that they can go into is that the court rules against him. And Rav Papa says Adamatchol and Yomi Achrasta, until the court announces the dates when they're going to start seizing his property. So Mazkefal Rami Bar Chama, so he challenges this. This is the general question. How can you say that you're buying it for this person, that Shimon's buying it from Reuven for Levi? How did Levi ever acquire it in the first place? How did he ever acquire this land? With this contract, this contract was fraudulent. It's just trash, because you're saying this contract is for this other person. It's trash because it was a fraud. It was stolen property. So Amar Rava, no, that there was a kinyan, and the kinyan was that he said, I'm going to rely upon you, that the person who was buying the stolen property, that I know that you're going to take care of me and you're going to get me everything. But who ana to low kamer me? He says the benefit that I'm not going to challenge you because samech and that I'm relying upon you, tarachu ma'isile, and that I rely upon you that you're going to always to tarachu ma'isile, that you're always going to work hard to bring it to me. And so under all, so that hana, that benefit, that's what gamar u'maknile. So then the seller is going to give it to him, and so therefore it's in return for that smichus das, that peace of mind that the purchaser is giving to him. Masav Rav Sheshes. So now Rav Sheshes challenges this from a brisa. The brisa says, that he says, everything which I'm going to inherit from father, or I'm going to sell to you, that which I'm going to trap in the field, lo amar kum. He's basically said nothing. It's not valid because he still didn't inherit it yet. But if he says that which I'll inherit today, is sell to you. That which I'm going to trap today is sold to you. Then dvarav kayamin. Then his words are good. So Amar Rabbi Bar Chama. So what's the question? Why in the first clause does it say in this case he's not acquiring it, when he's saying that even though he inherits it afterwards, he's saying right now I'm going to, he's making a kinyan in his mind. He's saying I'm going to get it. So why does it not work? So Rami Bar Chama says, this is a man and this is a question. Amarava gavra kachazina v'tiyufta lo kachazina. So Rava says, I see a man, but I don't see a question. I see a great man, I don't see a question. In the case where the person is buying the stolen property, he has smichus das. He really relies upon this person that is going to get it to him. But in this case, with the inheritance or the trapping, he doesn't know that the guy is really going to inherit the property. So here he's relying upon him. He knows he's going to bring it to him because he doesn't want to be called a robber. In the other case of the inheritance, he's not relying upon him. So Shalchul Kamed to Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda. So they sent this matter to Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda. Amalu Zu Eina Tzuchofnim. This question does not need to be brought in to the base medrash. So Rashi says two explanations. One is nobody knows how to answer it, and Rashi says it's not even a question, just the opposite approach. It's such an obvious question. It's just an obvious answer. This does need to go all the way in. Because there's a distinction. In one case, the person really relied upon him, the other one he didn't. They was this matter in Pumpadisa, and they challenged the situation. And Rav Yosef says you don't need to bring this question in. Same distinction. So now the Gemara says, well, about this price, so why in the one case do we say, he says, I'm selling you that which I inherit from my father, that it's not a valid inheritance, it's not a valid sale. But in the other case, where he says that which I'm inheriting from my father today, I'm selling to you. It is valid. So what's the distinction? The reason why he says that which I inherit from my father today is valid, because he wants to give honor to his father, meaning he says his father's about to die that day, and so therefore he wants to make sure to give him the property. But that which he wants to be sure to be able to buy the funeral expenses, and also masha to that which I'm going to inherit, or that which I'm going to trap today. Also, he needs right away. He needs to do the sale mishum kidei chayav, because the sages instituted that his word should be upheld because he needs to get food, and so he needs just to buy, food to eat. So therefore, the rabbis allowed it under those circumstances. But when he says that whatever I will trap the whole month or the whole year, that's a much greater expense. So the rabbis didn't institute this takana. Amar Avuna, Amar Rav, Amar Chavero. So we're on the top of 16b. Somebody says to his field. The Gemara is going into like a stream of consciousness here, unrelated topics. So the Gemara says, somebody says to his friend, this field that I purchased, when I purchased it, he says, I'm going to be buying a field, and when I buy the field, it'll be sold to you from right today. So kana, that's acquired. And Amar Rava, Mistaber Milsa the Rav Besada Stam. So Rava says, this teaching of Rav is where you say, I'm going to buy a field in general, because then it's clear you're going to buy a field, because you can always buy a field. Oh, Sadazu, but this field, like that piece of property, that doesn't work. Why? Mi Aver into Mizabin way. Who's going to actually say, how do we know for sure that field will specifically be sold to him? The Gemara says, but we swear, Amar Rav, Afilu Besadazu. Even if he says this specific field, it's a valid sale. Because who is Rav ruling? Like Rabbi Meir. Rav rules like Rabbi Meir, who says, a person can sell something that's not yet in existence. And he can sell something that's not yet in existence. The Tanya Omer Isha is or a person says to a woman, come betrothed to me after I convert. After you convert. After I'm freed. After you're freed. After your husband dies, or after you get chalitza, after your sister dies, and then she's my wife, so then I can marry you. Eina mikudeshes. All these cases don't work, but Rameir says mikudeshes, even though they're not yet in existence, it's still a valid betrothal. And this woman, since not yet in existence, it's like this field, like this specific field, or this specific woman. Rabbi Meir mikudeshes. Rabbi Meir still says in that case it's a valid betrothal, even though it's davar shelo ba'olam, it's something that's not yet in existence. Amar Shmuel. So now Shmuel teaches us Hamotzei shtar hakna b'shuk. If somebody finds a shtar hakna, somebody finds in the marketplace. Somebody finds in the marketplace a this shtar hakna, which we had 2 days ago in the Masechta, that this is a document that the person says, you might lend me money, but even if you don't ever end up lending you money, my properties there's all lien on these properties to you. Then he finds this document in the marketplace, he has to return it to the lender. Because what's your concern that maybe he said he's going to borrow it, but he never ended up borrowing? Well, he specifically says, I'm placing a lien on all my property to you. And then if you're going to be concerned that maybe he already paid the document, we're not going to be concerned about payment. Because if it would be the case that he paid it, then mikrahu kara, then he would have torn it up. So therefore, he didn't pay the document yet. So he returned to the lender. Amar Rav Nachman, Abba min sifrei dayani. So Rav Nachman says, my father. You have to love this Gemara, Rav Nachman. You want to know how Rav Nachman became Rav Nachman? he says, my father was one of the Sofrim. Well, my father was a Sofrim of the judges of Mar Shmuel. And Rav Nachman used to hang around his father, who was sitting there at the feet of Shmuel and writing. He was a Sofer. Abba min Sifra Dayani Demar Shmuel Ave. Vina Kabar Shita Kabar Sheva. And I was there when I was 6 or 7 years old. The Harana and I remember that they used to make a proclamation. Hani Shtariak Nasa, the Mishtakli Beshuka, these Shtarak Na that you find in the shuk, in the marketplace, now Drinu Marayu, you return them to the owner. And so that's what I remember. And it's such a beautiful image and symbolic that this boy, that this great sage remembers when he was a little boy, if you find something, a Shtarak Na, you return it to its owner. Who's our owner? Hashem Yisparach. Boy is remembering something so special. Amar Rav Amram Afanan Tanina. We also learned this. Kol Masa Bezdin. Any court that's issued by any document that's issued by a court, you return it to the person who can use it to enforce it. We see we're not concerned that you actually maybe paid the document. So Amar Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera says, no. When does this Brisa say this? When does this Mishnah say this idea? When do we say this idea? In the Mishnah on Daf Chaf, what's it referring to? That's not referring to documents that are lenders, but they're referring to Shtari Chal Ta'asa. These are referring to basically documents that the court issues, that it's called a Chal Ta'asa document. That this is Rashi says, this is a document that the court writes to basically seize property. That he says he owes money and now you're allowed to go, and he hasn't paid you, but the court issued a ruling. And now he can go and seize the property, or an adrachta. And so this is adrachta is basically that this is another type of document that the court issues, and that he's basically like in discovery to find this property. These are documents that are just proofs that the court ruled in your favor, but they're not documents that you could say you paid them. And so therefore, that case is different. So those documents we don't return because they're not documents that were IOU notes. They're just documents that the court issues. Amarava v'hani lav b'nei piron. The Rava says, what do you mean these documents are not payment documents? V'amri na'ardai. But then Na'ardai said, Shuma, that let's say you have a real estate field, the court evaluated and they collected the assets of the borrower from it for the lender. Hadar, but if the borrower gets money, he could go and reclaim it. Up to a year. And usvirui deshuma hadar la'olam, that you could always reclaim it. And so therefore, these documents could also be paid because it's possible that the borrower went and paid his debt and received back the land. And also these documents, which were proof of collection, he said, listen, I paid it and now I got it back. So what's the reason? What's the reason that you return these adrachta and the chaltasa to the lender or to the person who has a claim? What's the reason that if you find a document, if you find a note, you return it to the lender? Because it's the borrower's fault. Because when he paid it, he should have torn up the document. Or if he didn't have the document to tear up, he should have had the lender write another document saying that he paid it. The Medina Ara lo bayu ma'ader. And so, because by the technical law, that technically speaking, why does he need to write another document? The technical law is that he doesn't need to return the land. And so therefore, because we want a person to walk in the ways of Hashem and to do the right thing, so therefore, therefore the rabbis say that the borrower could say, okay, return the money back that return the land back that you seized from me because I didn't pay my note. So therefore, it's as though he's buying the property new, and he so he could demand a note of sale here. So the Gemara says, "Well, so if he finds this note from the court, like the seizure documents, why don't we have to be concerned it was paid? It was paid already, and why do we not require that to be returned? Why don't we say it's the debtor's fault?" No, Imi said the pare because if he really paid it, maybe he should have torn it up. No, Amor ishtamuti kamashtamele. Maybe he could say maybe the guy slipped away. He said, tomorrow I'll bring it to you. Now I don't have it with me. Or or maybe it says you still owe me like the scribal fees, but we didn't pay for everything yet, and so therefore I'm still holding it. Somebody who finds a note in the market, even though the note has the certification of the court, zero. You don't return this document to the owners. Not only in a circumstance where he didn't write this document, where there's no certification on it. So if you find the note in the marketplace, so he's arguing with Rav. Rav says you return it. Rabbi Yochanan says you don't return it. Not only in a circumstance where it's not certified, but if it's not certified, you can say he went to the borrower, he never borrowed it. Even if the document is certified by the court, you still don't return it. Why? Mind you, the Mekuyim. Well, and nevertheless, you don't return it. Because we have to be concerned that maybe it was paid already. So the Gemara challenges this. But didn't we say don't we say you always return a ma'isa bezdin? If it's certified, why don't you return it? Amrle. So Rabbi Abba says to Rabbi Yirmiyah, Yirmiyah, my son. This was a term of affection. We'll call ma'asa based in shavim. Not all the documents of the court are equal. Ella could go into huchsa kafran. So, meaning to say, when do we say that if it's a ma'isa bezdin? When do we say this? That where the person has already been established as a liar. And so since he's already been established as a liar, we don't believe him anymore to say I paid it. And so therefore, in that case, you return it. And with respect to this case, that's where we return the document to the lender. However, where he's not established as a liar, then we don't return it. So Amarava Mishum de Hoksa Kafrin Chadas Zimna Sua Paraklal. You mean to say because he's established as a liar once, then he never. And so under those circumstances, he doesn't have to pay. We say under those circumstances, that people don't have to pay him their debts. What do you mean? So if somebody's established as a liar, you could just make up claims against him? Our Mishnah that says that if it's a document to the court, you don't return it, that's Bishtar Chalta Badrachta, Rabbi Zera. That's talking about these like seizure documents, foreclosure documents. And that's like Rabbi Zera, who said that it's talking about a case that like Rabbi Zera said above. So now the Gemara is going to continue about liars, but since we'll come to this stop, we'll stop the recording here. We'll say